Hello everybody, hope you guys are enjoying your day. Today we're going to be looking at your tropical depression Cristobal update here because this is going to continue to move northward. Yesterday we saw it just starting to make landfall with Mexico and it started to head into Guatemala. Now it's on its way making its loop back around and now it's going to be heading northward through the central Gulf of Mexico, and it's going to be heading most likely towards Louisiana here, and your impacts are going to be felt anywhere from Louisiana to about Florida because the eastern side of this system is going to be much stronger than the western side of this system. So areas in Texas probably won't feel too much impacts, while areas in Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, and then of course Louisiana will most likely feel very intense impacts in terms of rainfall, wind speeds, rip currents, and all of that. I'm going to have my personal cone of uncertainty in today's video, and then also I'm going to put out my personal storm surge forecast and how high I think your storm surge is going to be from this. So let's get right into it here with your National Weather Service page. We have red flag warnings and flood watches in effect for parts of the Southwest, which kind of contradict each other because red flag warnings, of course, they mean fire weather, and of course, we have flood watches right next to them. So it is something very interesting to see over eastern Utah, western Colorado, those flood watches as well for western Colorado, western Utah, eastern Nevada, and northern Arizona. There you have some red flag warnings, heat advisories, and some excessive heat warnings in effect for parts of Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, and even as far north as Oklahoma and Arkansas. We have some severe thunderstorm watches for parts of Tennessee, Mississippi, and Arkansas. There we have some tropical storm warnings, I believe there, tropical storm warnings in effect for those areas, or tropical storm watches for the inland areas. Offshore, you have some tropical storm warnings, and those are probably going to be upgraded to some tropical storm warnings up there near Louisiana and Mississippi there. And then we have flood watches from New Jersey to about North Carolina and Virginia. And then we also have another area there for Florida, the southeastern part of Florida, under some flood watches. So let's get into it with your tropical depression Cristobal, and probably within the next about 6 to 12 hours, this will strengthen into a tropical storm again. It, of course, was a tropical storm, and then it kind of moved inland, which I'll actually show you in just one moment. So here is where it currently is, and it's starting to move northward. This is as of about 2 or 3 hours ago from when I'm recording this. So by this point, it is most likely right around here, and it's just starting to move onto the ocean. Now, here's the kind of uncertainty from the National Weather or the National Hurricane Center, and you see anywhere in those yellows, the highlighted tropical storm watches there, anywhere in the yellow from Louisiana to Alabama, and then also for parts of southeasternmost Mexico there by any time between about 10 a.m. Friday Central Time, so 10 a.m. today, which is already passed. So by their next update, which is gonna be within another hour or two, they're probably gonna upgrade this to a tropical storm. If not, they'll wait until the next one, and then they'll upgrade to a tropical storm, and then we'll finally start to get some aircraft reconnaissance again, because I believe they don't do it unless it's a tropical storm. So we'll finally be able to get some aircraft reconnaissance in this, but they do expect that this will move through parts of Louisiana, and then it's going to move northward, stay as a tropical depression, which is very interesting, all the way until it hits about Wisconsin or so. So that's very far inland for this to still be a tropical depression, or at least some sort of tropical entity, and this will move even further north. It might be a tropical depression all the way until it hits the Canadian border with the United States. So that'll be something very interesting to see. Here's your track, your previous track of this storm tropical depression Cristobal, and this is ever since it pretty much ever since it was downgraded to a tropical depression. You see it started kind of just eastward there, and then it starts to loop back around to the south, and now it's moving northward, and it's going to continue to move northward. And there was no sustained winds of tropical storm force that were recorded within the past couple of at least the past day or two here. So Here's your key messages, and I'm going to read out some of them here. We have four today, and they've really been starting to put out more products with this as it starts to potentially make landfall with the United States, especially with Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. They say damaging and deadly flooding has already been occurring in portions of Mexico and Central America. Cristobal is expected to produce additional extreme rainfall amounts through the end of the week. The heaviest additional rainfall is expected over far southern Mexico and portions of the Yucatan Peninsula, while also extending along the Pacific coast from Chiapas to Guatemala and El Salvador. This rainfall could cause widespread life-threatening flash floods and mudslides. Refer to products from your local weather office for more information. Number two, they say life-threatening storm surge is possible along the Florida Big Bend and portions of southeastern Louisiana and along the Mississippi coast within the next 48 hours, and a storm surge watch has been issued for these areas. Residents in these locations should follow advice given by local emergency officials. Number three, they say there is an increasing risk of tropical storm force winds beginning Sunday morning from intercoastal city Louisiana to the Alabama-Florida border, including metropolitan New Orleans, and a tropical storm watch has been issued for this area. These winds will arrive well in advance of and extend well east of Cristobal Center. Heavy rainfall, number four, they say heavy rainfall will spread onto portions of the Gulf Coast from East Texas to Florida this weekend into early next week, with areas of flash flooding and rapid rises on smaller streams and rivers possible. So let's start to look at some of that model guidance here, and this is your main models, and most of them, all of them actually, having it making a landfall with Louisiana, but that doesn't mean that really, I'm going to quickly draw up where I think your main area of impacts are going to be, and if you live within this area, as it's starting to make landfall with Louisiana, anywhere in this area, I believe you will still be feeling some of those tropical storm force or tropical depression wind speeds because of how broad this system is going to be. And you see, I didn't really draw that for the western side or the southern side. That's because some of these less organized systems, most of the time on the eastern and northern side of this system, they usually will have the strongest or they'll have the most impacts. And only with really defined systems like hurricanes will you see that it's really well rounded on each side that you see those impacts there. So here's your GFS ensemble models. This is your American model, and you see all of them pretty much. Yeah, actually all of them bring it into Louisiana, some touching Mississippi and some touching Texas, but for the most part into Louisiana as anywhere between a 990 to about 1,000 millibar low pressure system. Some even bring it lower than 990 millibars, and then it heads northward, and then whatever happens from there is really an unknown by this point. But a lot of them actually have it strengthening into Canada to about 980 millibars, which is very, very intense. Now, here is your Canadian model ensemble models, and you see a little bit more all over the place. These are less accurate, but still it's good to look at them. Anywhere from Alabama to Texas is where they're putting their storm tracks here. Now here's your previous wind speeds, and you see we have some tropical storm force wind speeds just touching in a little bit inland into southernmost Mexico, but other than that we didn't see too much tropical storm force wind speeds. Here is the probability of you seeing tropical storm force wind speeds, which is about 39 miles per hour or greater. And you see, yesterday, I said I think that they should upgrade this to about a 60 to 70% chance, and they actually did one better, and they brought it to a 70 to 80% chance of seeing tropical storm force wind speeds, and that's anywhere in that red. But as you get to areas inland over parts of Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, you have anywhere in those greens a 5 to 30% chance, and you see how far inland that goes, all the way to Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, and into Texas and Louisiana, and then anywhere in those yellows, that's where you have about a 30 to about 50% chance of seeing tropical storm force wind speeds, and don't be surprised if they do upgrade this even more and intensify those numbers. Now here's your chances of seeing 50 knot wind speeds or 58 mile per hour wind speeds, and you see anywhere in those screens you have about a 5 to 20% chance of that happening, and actually just offshore of Louisiana is that 10% chance starting. So you have a decent chance of a pretty low chance over Louisiana of seeing those very, very high wind speeds there. Now, Here is the most likely arrival time of those tropical storm force wind speeds, and you see we have probably by about Sunday 8 a.m. Central Time is when you'll probably see that anywhere from about the Panhandle of Florida to about easternmost Texas, pretty much on the border with Louisiana there. So here's currently your intensity guidance from these models, and a lot of them bring it to a middle to high end tropical storm here. Now let's look at your peak storm surge forecast from the National Hurricane Center, and you see they have storm surges all the way to about southern Florida, and all the way looping all the way around into Louisiana there. So you see we have a 2 to 4 foot storm surge into eastern Louisiana, Lake Borgne. We have 2 to 4 feet storm surge, and then for the Florida Panhandle, we have a 1 to 3 foot storm surge, and then 2 to 4 foot in the Big Bend area of Florida, and then by Tampa, you have a 1 to 3 foot storm surge all the way to southern Florida there. So we have a pretty decent storm surge, and especially for those areas that are over near New Orleans and Baton Rouge, that's where you're pretty much below sea level in a lot of those areas. So a little bit of storm surge is definitely problematic and could cause a lot of flooding for those areas. So here is your current rainfall forecast from the Weather Prediction Center, and this is only the rainfall that is expected from Tropical Depression Cristobal, which is soon to be Tropical Storm Cristobal. And you see anywhere in those lightest screens, 1 to 2 inches, 2 to 4 inches in the darker greens, 4 to 6 inches in these yellows, and then 6 to 10 inches in the oranges. And you see we actually have some of those showing up for southern, southeastern Louisiana and southern Mississippi, but over a wider area we have that large area of 2 to 4 inches, which spreads all the way from Florida to Missouri there. So it is a very, very large area there. So here is your risk of flash flooding within the next 3 days. Then we'll go through every single individual day. You see for the 3 day forecast, they have a 10%, a slight risk there for parts of southern Louisiana and southern Mississippi there. Now here's your day 1 outlook, and you see they don't have any risk except for southern Florida there. Now here's your day 2 outlook, and this is a little bit more widespread, anywhere from southeastern Louisiana to all of Florida for the most part. We have a marginal risk, 5 to 10% chance of flash flooding, and then on day 3 is when it gets heightened, and we have a slight risk there for Louisiana and Mississippi there. Now here is the amount of heat content which is in the ocean currently, and you see we have quite a bit of it, and especially within this area that is going to be tracking that the storm is going to be tracking, we have quite a bit all the way until it hits just south of Louisiana is when it starts to really drop off. But the amount of heat content in the ocean actually helps this storm really grow. Now here is as of June 3rd, which is only about 2 days ago from now, a day and a half ago from when they took these, and these are sea surface temperature anomalies, and you see we have quite high quite above average temperatures all the way throughout this area. We only have a little bit of below average to near normal temperatures as we head closer to Louisiana there, but that won't really affect this storm too much. But as it's developing throughout this area, it is going to be under some very, very warm waters, and especially here's your actual temperatures, sea surface temperatures, and you see anywhere where you're in that orange, those reds, the dark reds, that's where you're above 26 degrees Celsius or above 80 degrees Fahrenheit, which is pretty much the magic number for tropical storms and or in hurricanes to start developing. And you see all of the Gulf of Mexico until you hit about the eastern side of Florida is over that 80-degree mark, and especially down in the Caribbean. So if we were to have some sort of system develop there, that would definitely be interesting to track. Now here's my personal forecast, and you see I have this moving northward into Louisiana, and I leave the outward chance that this moves into Mississippi or Alabama there. Still, I don't want to kind of rule anything out too quick, but you see I don't have this really touching Florida too much or Texas. Doesn't mean that it's not going to impact those areas, but the direct track looks to be mainly for Louisiana or maybe westernmost Mississippi, and this is going through the 9th of June here. So Here's your storm surge forecast. So this is your first layer, and we have two layers here. This is your first layer. This is where it's under 3 feet, and you see for anywhere basically from Houston to down to southwesternmost Florida, off the shore, I think you will have under 3 foot storm surge, but I do think you'll have some storm surge at least in all of those areas. Now here is where I think it's going to be more profound. 3 to 6 foot storm surge, probably on the lower end, 3 to 4 feet for many of these areas, anywhere from about from southernmost Alabama to about south central Louisiana. There's where I expect 3 to 6 foot storm surge out of this event. Anyways, guys, that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.